4,000 years ago, one of the greatest cities on earth stood here, Ur of the Chaldees, and inside it, a man whose name would outlast every empire on earth. Ur was wealthy, powerful, and deeply religious. But every god in this city was made of stone, and one man had begun to wonder what if none of them were real. His name was Abram. His father sold idols for a living, and according to ancient tradition, Abram once smashed every idol in his father's shop, all except one. Then a voice spoke, not from a stone statue, not from a temple, from somewhere and someone Abram had never encountered before. "Leave, go, I will show you." He left. No map, no destination, just a voice and a promise. Abram packed everything he owned and walked away from the greatest city in the world. The journey was hundreds of miles through some of the most difficult terrain in the ancient world, but every step was an act of faith in a God nobody else yet knew. They stopped in Haran, and there, Abram's father Terah died. For years, the journey paused. Sometimes even the faithful get stuck somewhere they were never meant to stay. God told Abram to look up at the stars. Can you count them? That is how many descendants you will have. Abram was 75 years old and had no children, and yet he believed. When Abram finally crossed into Canaan, God said 4 words that would echo through all of history. To your descendants, I will give this land. The first thing Abram did in the promised land was not build a house. He built an altar. Before he settled, he worshiped. That order, worship before comfort, defined his entire life. Then famine hit the promised land, and Abram did something very human. He ran toward the nearest solution. Sometimes even great faith takes a detour through Egypt. Egypt was everything Canaan was not: wealthy, powerful, civilized, and completely indifferent to the God of Abram. It was the most dangerous place in the world for his faith. Abram told Pharaoh that Sarah was his sister, not his wife. It was a half-truth that became a whole disaster. Even the father of faith made choices he would deeply regret. Back in Canaan, the land could not support both Abraham and Lot's enormous herds. So Abraham gave Lot the first choice, the older man giving way to the younger. That is not weakness. That is faith. Lot looked at the lush Jordan Valley and chose it immediately. It was beautiful, prosperous, well-watered. He chose with his eyes. He had no idea what was living in those cities. When 4 kings kidnapped Lot and took him captive, Abraham did not pray and wait. He armed 318 of his own men and launched a night raid to bring his nephew home. On the road home, a mysterious priest king named Melchizedek appeared with bread and wine. No origin, no genealogy, just a blessing. And Abraham gave him 1/10 of everything. The writer of Hebrews would say this man was no ordinary priest. That night, God made a covenant with Abraham in the most ancient way possible, by passing between cut animal halves as a smoking furnace and flaming torch. God alone walked through. God alone took the oath. 10 years passed. No child. So Sarah took matters into her own hands and gave her Egyptian servant Hagar to Abraham as a wife. It seemed like a practical solution. It created a conflict that still echoes today. When Hagar ran away into the desert alone and pregnant, God found her. Not Abraham, not Sarah. God went after the servant girl in the wilderness, and he called her by name. At 99 years old, God changed Abram's name to Abraham, father of many nations. A man with 1 son and a barren wife was being called the father of multitudes. Before the miracle came the new name. 3 strangers appeared at Abraham's tent in the heat of the day. Abraham ran to meet them. At 99 years old, he ran. He had no idea he was entertaining angels. Or perhaps something even greater. When the visitor said Sarah would have a son within 1 year, she laughed. She was 90 years old, but God's answer was not anger, it was a question. Is anything too hard for God? Abraham stood before God and negotiated for the lives of the people of Sodom. Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? He asked 6 times, each time lowering the number. This is what friendship with God looks like. Fire and sulfur rained from the sky. The cities of the plain were destroyed completely. Archaeologists have found evidence of a catastrophic event in that region, around the exact time period of Abraham. The angels said one thing: do not look back. Lot's wife looked back, and she became a pillar of salt. Jesus himself would later say 3 words about her: remember Lot's wife. And then the impossible happened. Sarah, at 90 years old, held a baby in her arms. She named him Isaac, which means he laughs. The God who asked if anything was too hard had answered. Sarah demanded that Abraham send Hagar and Ishmael away. Abraham was deeply troubled, but God told him, "Do not be distressed. I will make Ishmael into a great nation too." No child of Abraham would be forgotten. When their water ran out in the desert, Hagar laid her son down and walked away so she would not see him die. Then God opened her eyes, and she saw a well of water that had been there all along. Then came the moment that would define Abraham's faith forever. Take your son, your only son, the one you love. Go to Mount Moriah and offer him as a burnt offering. For 3 days they walked in silence. Isaac carried the wood, Abraham carried the fire and the knife. And then Isaac asked the question that must have shattered his father's heart. Where is the lamb? Abraham bound his son on the altar. He raised the knife. And in that impossible moment, the angel of the Lord called out from heaven, "Abraham, Abraham, stop. Now I know that you fear God." Abraham looked up, a ram, caught in a thicket. He offered it in place of his son. And he named that mountain, "The Lord will provide." And to this day it is still said, "On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided."